Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. Today, I welcome Cordell Carter to the Rethink Leadership podcast. He's helped over 10,000 worldwide professionals, executives and investors through his leadership at the Aspen Institute in areas such as the Socrates Program, Project on Belonging and the Festival of Diaspora. These international programs offer educational forums and opportunities for leaders to learn from each other, create important partnerships, and equip themselves to promote diverse, equitable opportunities and belonging for everyone. Cordell has achieved over $6 million in philanthropic and private support since 2016 and has held leadership roles with the TechTown Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, IBM Corporation, and National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. In June 2021, President Joe Biden appointed him as Commissioner to the President's Commission on the White House Fellowships. We talk about civil discourse, we talk about bringing leaders together, and we talk about the magic that happens when we do it correctly. We have made a donation as a thank you to Cordell to the American Association for Access, Equity and Diversity. Find out more about this wonderful organisation at www.aaed.org. Cordell, thanks very much for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your passions as a leader, as a philanthropist, and in the communities within which you serve.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jeremy, and Happy New Year to you. I hope 2024 is a year of abundance for you and your family. I'm Cordell Carter. I live in the DC metropolitan area, but I'm a citizen of the world, and I feel very, very fortunate to have a portfolio of work that sends me all over the place. I'm chasing goodness. I'm following the good, and I feel very fortunate to live that life. So my one body of work that I'm after is with the Socrates Program at the Aspen Institute. It's a public seminar program that's been around for about 29 years now. And we are introducing leaders to text and ethics-based Socratic dialogue on contemporary leadership topics. We just finished the very first Socrates seminar in Warsaw, Poland last week. And it was just fantastic talking about the future of Europe in a place that's very, very close to an active war zone. Half of the room are Hungarians, Bratislavans, and Ukrainians. And so, when they talk about Donbass, it's not something they saw on CNN or Al Jazeera. It's like, I live there, my house is no longer standing type of conversation. And it really brings these things to life. Feel very fortunate to create safe spaces for them. The other body of work is with the Festival of Diaspora. I call it perhaps the greatest secular tent revival that ever existed. We are doing our third annual one in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, at the end of February. Very excited to have mayors from all over the USA as well as Brazil gathering to talk about data and equity and all these great topics and how you can be better policymakers, starting with the data first. We're also having 24 different panels with amazing speakers and leaders telling their stories, sharing best practices, and 200 people who don't know each other that will soon be a part of each other's life, right there in a very beautiful setting at Leblon Beach in Rio de Janeiro. So I'm super excited about that work. And in addition to that, I lead a program called the Project on Belonging, which is seeking to elevate the national conversation here in the USA on all things race, class, and inclusion to the outcome we're trying to achieve, which is a land where we all belong and enjoy equitable opportunities to thrive. And so building convenings around that is something I'm doing quite a bit all over the country, and it's fantastic. I can't complain. I'm always busy, but I'm having fun.
Well, that smile tells it all, actually. And you do get around a bit. I mean, only just now, the Warsaw, then on to Rio. I know Leblon Beach very well, actually. I used to do a bit of work down in Rio and I would always stay around there. Great place.
Yes.
I love what you talked about following the good. And this is something that I want to get into as far as policymakers and leaders go, because you are known very well, Cordell, as a leader who is a force for the greater good. And it's so fascinating and gratifying talking to somebody like you that has the passion for it that comes through in all of these different areas. And I'd maybe like to ask you the question, what does that mean, being a force for the greater good? And why do you feel it's an important muscle to exercise for policymakers, senior leaders within organizations, etc.?
I'm in a season of convergence. I'm a preacher's child, and so I grew up watching a particular type of service. And for many of the men in my family, for at least the last 4 or 5 generations, service looked one way. They did military service and they went to the pulpit. I have done neither. Okay. But I was like, that is their method of following the good and chasing it. What's my method? I never fully defined it. And I think what convergence means to me now that I'm in my 40s is the things that I like to do, the things that I was trained to do, and the things I was born to do all gather and connect. And now, work disappears because everything, it's like I said, it's like it's tapping into the universal right? It's a vibration, and that frequency is a production. You're just being productive, you're being creative. And for me, that's convenings, bringing, like, framing the questions in a way that are compelling, convincing people to come, people that are what I call the motley crew. If it's not a motley crew, it won't be that interesting. So think Monty Python here. You got a motley crew, people that are representing different facets of whatever place you're in, that are sharing what they think and what they view and their perspective on that particular issue. And it's tremendous. And so one of my favorite groups of people to work with are mayors. Why? Because they are retail politicians. They don't have the luxury of saying, well, you're one of just a number of people in my district that I represent, and I'm in DC or I'm in Warsaw or I'm in some other capital representing no, this isn't representation. This is actual, you were directly elected by the people that see that. You're going to see at church, you're going to see at the grocery store, you're going to see at the park, you're going to see them everywhere. You cannot escape them. And so you're constantly accountable. Moreover, most cities, you have to balance your budget. You don't have the ability to print money like our federal politicians in the USA. And so you have to balance, you have to make it priorities, and you have to make a call. It's tough, but you have to be able to justify that call. Why? Because you're being held accountable every single day. And so if you really want something to move fast, at least in the United States of America, you talk to a mayor. You work with a mayor because they can make things move fast because they don't have a choice. And so as I look like, who can I bring these convenings that are value added for them as well as for the people that come? Invariably, it falls on mayors because, they can be economic engines for the city based on procurement, but they also can be amazing thought partners just based on their point of view. They have just connections that most of us don't even think to have because we don't have to have it. They do. And so I love working with mayors. And to the latter part of your question about the importance of data, because they're so accountable, often you'll have these knee-jerk decisions that in the long run don't look so good. They don't age well, as we say. And so if you start like, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. And in Brazil in particular, they have an issue of inequity. Just if you live in a favela, life is not great, and that's your expectation is not going to be great. And so if your goal is to make life better, if your goal is to extend opportunity, start asking different questions up front. Okay, so where are we? Where are they in comparison to the rest of the city? Okay, I see they're low on education, they're low on this. They have issues with public utilities. Let's work on that first because that's what the data says. I don't have to say I want to be the most equitable mayor that Rio has ever seen or that Montgomery, Alabama has ever seen. Just the data will tell you where to go. And the end result is a more equitable outcome for the people you're seeking to impact. And so that's why I think mayors, are an amazing trigger point for a lot of great things.
There's a lot in that, and I like what you're talking about, the essence of service, where in the environment that you grew up in, it's either the pulpit or the military. It seems for you it's around communities, whether they're global, regional, local. And you said a word, that convergence, that coming together, and you seem to be the glue, I have to say, Cordell, within this. All right, so you kind of sit between all of these things and bring them all together. Am I right in interpreting that?
Yes, that absolutely right. Absolutely right. I call it civic ministry. And it's my whole world is under that umbrella of civic ministry. And the outcome is the same. You're pushing the good. You're chasing it. You're creating an environment for good things to happen for others. that get a policy objective or perhaps a financial objective as a fundraising target. But the goal is to get good things out there.
Yeah, and you're so right to say that actually the start point for getting good things out there is asking the right questions. So
Absolutely.
securing the right data so that your decisions can be really driven and tailored to those communities or people or whoever it is that you're serving at the time. As part of your civic ministry, I like that terminology, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you also use a different terminology as well. You talk about civil discourse being so important and getting people
Mhm.
involved in that, and particularly when you bring that together with engaged leaders, you talk about the magic really happens at that point. So
Mhm.
could you explain what you mean by that and any examples that you could share for those tuning in?
Sure, sure. We've fallen out of practice. The last, 20 years of social media has really uh, slowed down or perhaps broken our ability to engage each other in a civil manner. I talked about accountability earlier with retail politicians. You also use that accountability of a person's reaction to your nonsense. I go back to the stories I dated before I was married. I dated in the 90s. I mean, I had to risk rejection. You had to ask a woman whether she wanted to dance in her face. I couldn't swipe left or right. I had to risk rejection. And if she said no, I picked up my face, put it back on, and walked away and asked someone else. And you build the emotional musculature to withstand conflict. Because we haven't built the musculature, because we're engaging in what I call digital thuggery, saying these horrible things to each other online and commenting on everything, whether we know anything about it or not, we've forgotten what it's like to sit across the table from someone. And the Aspen way, the Aspen today was a round table. I can see your face, you see my face. We're living within this text. This is the booklet, 150 pages. That's our universe for today. And I'm filtering everything I have to say through this text in a civil, respectful way. Uh, we're forgetting our humanity in all of this. And so part of the job of civil discourse, I think that the beauty of it is that it restores that humanity, this idea that you and I may disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. I may be adamantly opposed to the things that come out of your mouth, but I'm going to respond in a way that I want you to, the same way I would want you to respond to me. And it's something we have to continually practice because we have a lot of incentives in our society not to do that. In fact, every incentive not to do it. You really don't have to if you don't want to. I'm thankful that many people want to. And so one of some of the great examples of this, I'll give you a perfect one. This is in Aspen, Japan. We go there once a year, every Memorial Day weekend. So in Japanese society, if a man is higher ranked or older, there's a certain way you speak to it. There's a lot of salutations, dear sir, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak, that type of thing. But we're in a round table, and the beauty of the English language is that it's really flat. Okay. There's not a lot of hierarchy there, you know? And so the women, the Japanese women that participate in these seminars demand that we only speak in English, even when we're going to karaoke at the bar. And I thought it was the oddest thing. I'm like, you don't have to do that for my benefit. They're like, this isn't for your benefit, it's for our benefit. I said, because now I can tell the deputy prime minister who's sitting in here that he's way off base and that the way he thinks about the world is incorrect. But it's okay because I'm speaking in English. Who would have thought that English becomes a force shield, right? To break through some of the cultural norms that prevents honest dialogue on things that we disagree with. But sure enough, and we did an article about this in the Aspen magazine a couple of years ago of these four Japanese women that even in the alumni association are demanding that people speak in English in all their gatherings, even though they're right there in Tokyo, because it's flatter and allows to get to the conversation faster. And so that's living proof that civil discourse is the way, and particularly text-based discourse is a very effective way to move the ball down the field, if you will.
That's fascinating. I hadn't realized that almost in some ways that English language transcends that cultural expectation and norm
Yes. Hmm.
and removes those hierarchical ticks which are there in place. I really hadn't got to that. That is fascinating. And you're right. It makes for a civil discourse and probably a quicker discourse at that point as
Absolutely.
well,
And
rather
more
than
frank
going round.
discourse too. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
because this person is not accustomed to people being super frank with them because they're very senior people. And so, but you need to hear that. Like, tell me if I need a breath mint, my friend, because I may not know that I smell unpleasant. Okay. So that's the beauty of English. my friend, please have a cert, have a Tic Tac.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think that's I remember talking about this with one of the classes that I did actually around those norms. It was around a Korean airliner that crashed, I think, in the 1980s or 90s, whereby there wasn't the ability to talk to hierarchy, i.e. the pilot. So the radio operator, the second pilot, couldn't talk to them. They saw a storm coming in. They knew it was, close to the mountains. And all they could do was say, "Oh, that's a powerful storm," rather than "We need to change. We need to do things." So it kind of took that out, and that actually changed the game for how they did things in a similar way to what you described there, in Japan, in Korea. But I also, going back to something you said first of all, I really reflect on and understand that terminology around digital thuggery. I have two kids. They've been social media savvy for the last 5 years, but boy, it can be brutal.
Oh, yes.
And for teenagers growing up and trying to come to terms with this, where you're not actually having a discourse with somebody, it's just this statement, that fact, this is what I need to do. It can appear like that. And for me, I'd always said that social media brings us closer. You can be one degree of separation away from whoever, the president or whatever it is, but you're also one more step removed away from the humanity that you talk about as well.
Exactly.
And really, really interesting, which makes for not necessarily civil discourse. And we tend to disagree violently rather than disagree agreeably, if you like, in some of those ways. So part of this and what you're talking about is around educating people around this and to get involved, and you're a great believer in that as well, to mobilize and grow our communities. And in mid 2021, I think it was, President Joe Biden appointed you as the commissioner to the President's Commission on White House Fellowships, and congratulations for that. That is an
Thank you.
incredible accolade. Could you explain what that role entailed and how you've progressed it since to do some of these things that you're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of leadership programs, especially fellowships that take you away from your day-to-day and give you a completely different experience. I call those career propelling events. I'm first generation in my family to go to university. And they call it imposter syndrome or whatever you want to call it. But I'm constantly looking for external validators. And so if you can imagine every cohort of 20-year-olds or 24-year-olds as like wildebeests, and they run in a point like an arrow, and the 15-year-olds in front because they've done it 15 times, the vulnerable in the middle to keep them protected, but all the other age cohorts are running along the same way. If you're a 4-year-old colt, you're experiencing life from the backside of a 5-year-old, unless you do some zag, some dodge of the crocodile or the lion, that some behavior that exhibits that you are, different from your cohort. Now you get to run with the 6-year-olds. And even though you're 4, you get to experience life from the backside of the 7-year-olds and look a little different. That's how I view fellowships. And so I've done 4 professional fellowships in my life, taken me to Germany, to China, all these different places around the world that really enriched my life in so many ways. The White House Fellowship is the top dog of them all. I had never applied, and I aged out by the time I figured out what it was. But it's been one of the honors of my career to be a volunteer coach to White House Fellows, say like 8 years ago, to start recommending some of my friends to White House Fellowship maybe 6 years ago, and then be a regional interviewer of like the folks in DC region, the last administration. So that was, I guess, 6 years ago. When President Biden came in, they asked if I were interested in being a full commissioner to the commission. I said absolutely. And so we see the last 30 finalists there, and you have to pick a class after 3 days of exhaustive interviews of these fellows. Now, because I'm DC based, I get to see them more often. Whereas most of the commissioners are spread out across the country. I see these folks all the time. We have breakfast. I'm asking how it's going. I'm giving advice. And if you've ever felt discouraged about the state of the world, talk to some of these fellows that literally, I mean, you would think they're from central casting. I'm like, there's no way that you're real. There's no way that you're like a mix of Liam Nielsen and Saving Private Ryan, and also a brilliant scholar who's written 12 bestsellers. That's the type of people you're talking about. And it makes me so, so happy and confident about the future leaders of this country, because I'm seeing 30 of the best every single June. Every single June, 30 of the very best Americans you've ever met in your life. And you can't pick them all. That's unfortunate. At best, you can get maybe half, but every single one of them is just incredible, and they're going to do amazing things as national finalists. And so it's one of the great pleasures of my professional life.
And it's so important that people like
Yes.
you and many of us in leadership, we're looking after that next generation, we're nurturing them, we're not necessarily doing that in business, we can do that in communities, we can do it through fellowships like this
Mhm.
and anything else. I mean, that's all part of being that force for good, that greater good, the future good as
Absolutely.
much as the good for now.
Hmm.
um and I think one other element within that, which is an important thread that we're all living in at the moment, we've referred to it already, is digital, and the fact that speed is the competitive currency of today. Digital possibilities surround us. And not everybody's kind of bringing those two things together. You talked about the word before, humanity, and enabling that with this sort of kind of strong digital thread that really sort of boosts this civic discourse. This empowers us to do greater things because we can leave some of those things, to be done rather more efficiently. So, from your perspective, as you kind of step out of your day to day and just think about this as a leader, how do you feel leaders in our businesses or in our communities could probably better embrace enabling technologies to support the kind of things that you're doing in education, innovation, growth and development, talent pipelines like this, etc.?
I think one of the big jobs of leaders that we often overlook is people are purposely availing themselves to you. Like, yeah, like you're hiring them, but they have to apply and have to agree to come. And so then, like, okay, what is my responsibility to them? I believe, or I've grown to know, that my responsibility is to curate an upwardly mobile professional experience for the people that avail themselves to me, whether I have them for 8 days or 8 years. Okay. There was a period, I would say about 6 years ago, where I was having to hire every 6 months. Like, I was expecting people to keep the pace that I keep, to literally not acknowledge weekends. Like, I'm a maniac about these things. And it takes me, 4 days on a 2-week vacation to actually stop and turn my stuff off. That I can't expect that of other people. So you just recognizing your own strengths and your biases and all of that. Like, you really have to get in touch with yourself and why you may not be a most welcome environment for people. And so I think for me, technology is an enabler, because my team is all over the country. I have 2 people that work for me in Colombia for the festival Diaspora. I only see them maybe once every 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I'm just not able to get to Colombia a lot. And so how do I impart my leadership style on them from a distance? Phone calls aren't going to do it. They have to see my face. So that's Zoom, that's Google Meet, that's all of the digital technologies there. It's emails, it's constant communication with them, different from the team that I get to see every day here in DC in my office. Now, because of the weather, we're snowed out, or I'm always traveling. We end up doing a lot of digital stuff. But for the time that we're in the office together, those times over the lunch table, sharing stories, those time reminding them that you do incredibly excellent work. We've just gotten so accustomed to our excellence that it's routine to us. But don't you ever forget that we do excellent work. We have really high standards for ourselves, and you should be proud of that. Okay. Me telling them what the career path is. This is what I see for you. And I'm talking like getting beyond me too. Like, I think I can only keep you for another year. At that point, I'm holding you back, because I don't, your growth is far wider than I'm able to give you for this particular organization. But, look at this other piece that I'm doing. Maybe you'll like that better, and it's going to pay a little more. And so being really honest that no one stays forever. And yes, it is cheaper to keep them, but you also have to have something to keep them with. You can't just say, hey, just be with me because I'm a nice guy. No, like, is this upwardly mobile for you? Is this a good thing for you? And so, if you're not doing those one-on-ones, every week, if you're not sharing your thoughts at those random times, if you're not just texting them, say, hey, hello, that's it, no agenda, hope you're doing good today, and walking away, Technology is the only way you can do that. In my father's generation, there was a person that he called his boss that he saw every day for 35 years. That's not my reality. I only see my boss when we travel. I saw him in Kenya in November, and I saw him last week in Poland. And literally, we've seen each other twice in 6 months, and it's never in the United States of America, even though we live 12 miles apart. So that's the reality of the working world in 2024. And we have to adjust, but never forgetting what our real job is. And that real job is curating an upperly mobile professional experience for those people that agree to be led by you. And so, to the degree which technology is helpful for you communicating and all that, that's super, super important. And just, you can't let that slip. Can't let that slip, or you'll lose them.
Yeah, you're right. And it's one of those things that with technologies that we have these days, we can actually do. I know people have been talking about after the pandemic, sort of Zoom fatigue and so on and so on. And yet it's easy to forget, isn't it? Those added benefits of, in just 10 years ago, I wouldn't have seen you for 6 months and we might have had a phone call every week or so, but you wouldn't have
Hmm.
seen me. Now we can do that every day. I can phone you up and have a coffee with you,
Yeah.
or we can you do what I do. My team is completely remote. My business is 100% distributed. Sometimes when we're all in our different offices, we just have a Zoom meeting open,
Hmm.
and we get on with our work. We occasionally look up and someone's there. We say hi and we have a coffee together or whatever. But it's just that community. You can do so much with it. So great. And the way you describe it, this upwardly mobile professional experience, which is putting humanity at the heart of it, but
Hmm.
using that enabling tech, I think, is key to
And
keep
also
community.
articulating what people need. Like, what does excellence look like in your role?
Mm.
Okay, can you do that repeatedly? Can you be excellent every single day in your role? Because the better you get at being excellent, the less time it takes you to be excellent. And now you have more time to go out and speak on panels and all that. I think the problem that younger people make, including myself, is once I got to a big brand name organization, oh, I want to go speak at a panel, I want to do this, I want to use this as a platform. No, my friend, that's something you work towards. And it's look, I have to be honest with people, and the only way I can be honest with them is to tell them about my own journey and where I did hit my and I made my mistakes, and hopefully that it resonates with them. And I'm trying to tell you a story, tell you about yourself by telling me about you. No, I'm using me to talk to you. So don't do what I've done, and you'll get there faster. The very thing that you want, you'll get there faster.
Yeah, and that came across with what you said before as well. I wrote down was this ability to have regular, honest conversations,
Hmm.
whatever that honesty is about,
Yeah.
whether it's a home truth, whether it's good news, whether it's whatever it is, but you're
Hmm.
injecting that human touch to keep that connection hot in many ways, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, that's a pursuit of excellence in itself. Look, as we draw to the end of this, and I really appreciate you joining me, Cordell. We've got a lot of leaders, a lot of community leaders also that tune into this podcast, and I like to understand your 5 key tips or challenges that you'd leave leaders or community representatives tuning in with in order to make, if you like, this magic happen as you talk about, between our communities, our businesses, and our leaders, our great people out there.
Well, the first thing is you gotta have a pursuit of excellence about you. If you've ever seen an NFL National Football League combines, this is where literally it's like a cattle call for NFL talent. They're looking at what they call a motor. Anyone can hit the object in front of them. What do you do when the object's not in front of you? Do you go find something to hit, or do you put your hands on your hip and you watch the play? I'm not drafting the guy that puts his hands on the hip. I'm gonna go find the guy that finds something to hit. Be that person. That's a pursuit of excellence, having your own standard. That's number one. Number two, figure out where, like, what role, how is your role important to the overall plan of the organization? Okay, like there's typically organizations have strategic plans, they have tactics, they have strategies, they have key performance indicators. Own that knowledge. If you understand your organization, where it's going and why it's going there, my goodness, you become so valuable to that organization. And so, like, be just an excellent curator of knowledge about your own organization, in addition to being excellent. Three, don't be a jerk. We spend 80% of our adult lives working. I'm convinced that that time shouldn't suck. Not all of it. Maybe 50% will suck, but less like making it more than that is just it's just a horrible way to live. So like these are people I'm basically in a house with for long periods of time. I'm seeing them more than my own children. I want this to be a pleasant environment. I want to be productive, but I also want to be pleasant. And so treat people the way you want to be treated. Number four, curious. Stay curious. Stay globally minded. Ask questions. Just have a great appetite for knowledge and data. It just makes you a much more interesting 40-year-old at dinner parties. Trust me, asking it questions. And the last thing I'll say, before the age of 35, and certainly before the age of 60, if given the option of adventure over convention, go for adventure. Go for that crazy, weird thing that's going to make for those great stories later. Because whatever we make in this life is not going with us. I'm a preacher's kid. Trust me, I've seen a lot of funerals. I've never seen one with a Brinks truck following behind a hearse. Never, never. Within 10 minutes, all your stuff is gone anyway. Someone else is wearing your clothes. All right. So you got to hold this life a little looser than we are. Got to hold your possession a little looser because you know you're just renting this space and time. So have fun with this thing called life. So chase the adventures. I am still chasing adventures. There's a way of doing it, right? There's a conventional way of chasing adventures, a way to ensure that you pay your mortgage and your private school tuition for your kid. So be that guy, understand what that is, that guy or that gal, but be adventurous, be excellent, be curious, be nice. This is a better way to live.
I'd summarize that last point by saying, love life.
Yes.
Get involved in it, right? And
yes,
this is worth reinforcing, that pursuit of excellence, how your role impacts the rest of the community, the organization, whatever it is, and how you own it, how you know what you know, and how you own what you do beyond that, without being a jerk about it, as you so
Indeed.
said.
Don't be a
Be
jerk.
human and treat people how you want to be treated. You're right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, leadership curiosity, any curiosity, actually, this is one of those muscles that is being flexed a little bit more for 2024. There's a lot more people talking about this, and I'm a great believer in that too. And and if you can do those first four, that is when you can be more adventurous rather than
absolutely. It's cumulative. Absolutely. Convention versus adventure.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I think we just made up a word, or I did. And and then you can love life.
Yes.
I have to say a big thank you for joining me, Cordell.
Thank you.
I'm sure those tuning in will want to find out more, continue the discussion, connect with you. How do they do that?
So I mostly post on LinkedIn or Instagram. On Instagram is Cordell_speaks. And on LinkedIn is Cordell Carter II, or Cordell Carter II. And the organization that I most enjoy, my passion, is the Festival of the Diaspora, and it is festivaldiaspora.org.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I know those tuning in will have done as well. Really appreciate your time, because it sounds like you have a lot on.
Yes, all the time.
Great. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. Please like, comment, and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.